Under the pale light of a satellite view, the deserts of Iran tell a quiet story. Scars, wide, black and symmetrical, mark where missile factories once stood. Now, faint outlines of new construction appear on the same coordinates. Narrator, voiceover. From the ruins of war, Iran is rebuilding. Brick by brick, hall by hall. The missile industry that Israel tried to erase is rising again. But this reconstruction may not just be about recovery. It could be a signal. One that revives the question echoing through every intelligence briefing in the region. Is a new war on the horizon? For nearly 4 decades, Israel and Iran have fought an undeclared war, a war of shadows carried out through proxies, cyber attacks, and covert sabotage. Israel views Iran as its greatest existential threat, a state committed to its destruction and pursuing nuclear capability to make that promise real. Iran, in turn, sees Israel as the regional spear of Western domination, an obstacle to its dream of regional leadership. Through the 2010s and 2020s, that hostility simmered through back channels, airstrikes in Syria on Iranian convoys, assassinations of scientists in Tehran, and cyber sabotage like the Stuxnet virus. But neither side dared cross the line into open warfare. That changed in October 2024. Israel carried out Operation Days of Repentance, a wave of long-range strikes against Iranian missile production and air defense sites. Among the targets, Parchin, Shahroud and Kojir, facilities tied to Iran's solid fuel missile program. Those strikes did serious damage, but they also redrew the map. For the first time, Israel showed that it could reach deep into Iran and was willing to do so. Tehran's response was limited, but the message was not lost. Deterrence had shifted. The shadow war was becoming something far more visible. Then came June 2025, the moment that shattered the old balance. At dawn on June 13th, Israel launched Operation Rising Lion. Its jets crossed the skies undetected, striking nuclear, missile and command sites across Iran. Within hours, fire and smoke billowed over Tehran's industrial belt and the missile research hubs of Shahroud. In those 12 days, Iran and Israel fought the most direct conflict in their modern history. Iran retaliated with volleys of Sejil ballistic missiles and Shahed-type drones, targeting Israeli cities from Tel Aviv to Beersheba. Some reached their targets. A missile hit Soroka Hospital. Another struck the Weizmann Institute in Rehovot, injuring dozens. But Israel's multi-layered defense, Iron Dome, Arrow and David's Sling, intercepted the majority. Israel's counter-response was devastating. It struck Iranian launch sites, radar arrays and missile bunkers. On June 23rd, one of the most controversial strikes hit Evin prison in Tehran, killing guards, inmates and visitors alike. Iran called it an atrocity. Israel insisted the target was an IRGC command post disguised within the complex. When the guns finally fell silent after 12 days, neither side could claim total victory. But the balance of power had undeniably changed. Israel had destroyed large parts of Iran's missile and air defense network, proving its reach deep inside Iranian airspace. Iran, though bloodied, showed that it could still rain missiles across the region, testing Israeli systems to their limits. Military analysts called it the shortest but most consequential Middle East war in a generation. It ended without formal ceasefire, just exhaustion, warnings and mutual calculation. Weeks later, satellite companies began releasing images that told a new story. At Parchin, once the heart of Iran's solid fuel missile program, massive craters had been patched over. New roofs shimmered in the desert sun. At Shahroud, steel frameworks rose where concrete shells had collapsed. By September 2025, analysts at the Associated Press and Iran International confirmed what many had suspected. Iran was quietly rebuilding its missile production infrastructure. But there was a crucial detail. Something was missing. The planetary mixers, the heavy drum-like machines used to blend solid propellant, were gone. Destroyed or dismantled during Israeli strikes, these machines are irreplaceable without foreign procurement. Without them, the buildings at Parchin are little more than empty shells. Still, the rebuild continued. To the outside world, it seemed a message of defiance that Iran's missile program, even crippled, was a symbol too important to abandon. As one analyst told AP, rebuilding the walls is easy. Rebuilding the deterrence is the hard part. Inside Iran, the government framed the effort as national resilience. State television aired images of cranes, engineers, and concrete mixers, calling them soldiers of reconstruction. But beyond the propaganda, real constraints remained: sanctions, shortages of equipment, and the risk that every newly repaired hall could become a target again. At the top of Iran's hierarchy, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei faced a dilemma. The June war had exposed the vulnerability of Iran's defences, but it had also strengthened his conviction that the country must never depend on outsiders for protection. Publicly, he called the rebuilding a sacred duty. Privately, reports suggest he was warned by advisers that another misstep could draw Iran into a conflict it could not win. Within the IRGC, hawks argued for accelerated reconstruction and new missile testing, while some government technocrats urged restraint and focus on the economy. At the same time, Israel's intelligence community, now monitoring Iranian sites more closely than ever, debated its own next move. Was it time to strike again before Iran restored full capability, or had the last war brought enough deterrence for now? The Middle East, as always, stood on a knife's edge. For Iran, missiles are more than weapons, they are ideology. The IRGC often calls them the wings of sovereignty, the one domain where Iran rivals its enemies. To rebuild them is to rebuild pride itself, but pride comes at a cost. Iran's military knows that another war with Israel would be catastrophic. The June conflict showed how exposed Iran's infrastructure remains, its radar gaps, its outdated aircraft, its limited interceptors. Khamenei's challenge is therefore psychological as much as strategic, to project strength while avoiding a war that could topple what remains of Iran's fragile stability. Since the summer, Tehran's rhetoric has shifted. Officials speak less about revenge and more about self-sufficiency and long-term deterrence. Yet the symbolism of reconstruction, especially at Parchin and Shahroud, cannot be ignored. Every satellite image of new concrete becomes a signal, a message to both enemies and allies. Iran is back in the game. Across the desert in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, the tone is equally firm. Israel's leadership insists it will never allow Iran to restore its long-range missile or nuclear capabilities. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, in recent cabinet sessions, reportedly reaffirmed that Israel will act alone if it must. Israeli defense planners see the rebuilt sites not as reconstruction, but as preparation for the next round. For Israel, the window of freedom, the period before Iran's full recovery, is shrinking. Striking again could preempt Iran's rearmament, but it could also reignite a regional inferno involving Hezbollah, Iraqi militias, and the Houthis in Yemen. This is Israel's dilemma: act early and risk escalation, or wait and risk Iran's return to strength. Beyond the immediate players, the world holds its breath. The United States, still nursing the costs of the last confrontation, has warned both sides against another spiral. Washington's priority now is containment, preventing a broader war that could endanger global oil routes and drag allies into conflict. Europe fears a refugee crisis and energy shock. China and Russia, though sympathetic to Iran, prefer stability for trade. Even Arab Gulf states, long hostile to Tehran, now quietly urge restraint, having seen what a single missile barrage can do to their infrastructure. In short, everyone understands that another Israel-Iran war would not stay confined to two countries. It would ripple through the global economy, security alliances, and diplomacy. So what could ignite the next confrontation? First, a rebuilt missile test. If Iran resumes live testing of long-range ballistic missiles, especially with solid fuel, Israel may interpret it as a red line crossed. Second, covert procurement. If Western intelligence detects new planetary mixers entering Iran, that could signal a return to mass missile production, inviting preemptive strikes. Third, proxy escalation. Hezbollah rocket launches from Lebanon or drone attacks by Iranian-backed militias in Iraq or Syria could draw Israel and Iran into indirect yet escalating clashes. Fourth, nuclear advances. Though the June war set Iran's program back by an estimated 18 to 24 months, any sign of renewed enrichment beyond civilian levels could trigger military action. And finally, political calculation. Leaders under domestic pressure, Netanyahu facing coalition turmoil, Khamenei managing unrest, may choose confrontation to project strength. At this stage, both sides are acting under paradox. Israel's deterrence lies in the threat of force. Iran's lies in proving it can withstand it. Each believes the other only respects strength. That mutual logic, a deterrence through defiance, is precisely what makes the situation so fragile. Military analysts at the International Institute for Strategic Studies warn that misjudgment, not intention, is the likeliest path to renewed conflict. In an environment of electronic warfare, drone patrols and propaganda, one misread radar signal or false alarm could set off a chain reaction. Behind the grand strategy lie millions of ordinary people. In Tehran, families stock up on essentials, worried about more air raid sirens. In Tel Aviv, residents glance skyward each time a distant rumble echoes. War, they know, would be swift, high-tech, and merciless. Iranian analysts quietly admit that the last conflict left their economy reeling. Oil exports plunged, inflation surged, and foreign investors fled. In Israel, military spending spiked while tourism and trade dipped. Both nations emerged wounded, neither victorious, yet nationalism thrives on wounds. Iran's state television frames the rebuilding as redemption. Israel's media depicts vigilance as survival. Each feeds the other's narrative. As we look ahead, several signals will tell us whether the Middle East edges closer to war or steps back from it. Satellite images revealing the return of planetary mixers or new solid fuel lines, increased IRGC troop movements toward western Iran, heightened Israeli air activity near the Red Sea or Persian Gulf corridors, sharp rhetoric or mobilization orders from either leadership, and, most revealing, the silence, because sometimes the most dangerous moves are the ones made in the dark. Narrator, softly, reflective tone. History in this region rarely repeats. It rhymes louder each time. As Iran rebuilds and Israel watches, the world once again stands at a familiar crossroad between containment and confrontation. What happens in those hangars and bunkers south of Tehran may decide not just the future of two nations, but the stability of an entire region. For now, the cranes still move, the walls still rise, and the rhetoric grows sharper. Every brick laid at Parchin is both reconstruction and provocation. Every Israeli satellite pass is both surveillance and warning. The next war is not inevitable, but it is, once again, imaginable, and that, in the Middle East, is often how wars begin.